So our topic, the paper that we pulled.
Gratitude.
Gratitude. That's a beautiful one. I'm grateful that we pulled that this morning. I like that word.
And is there a particular reason why you are grateful that we pulled that this morning?
Yes, because this time of year is dark. Some of the darkest days of the year happen in the winter. And I am someone that definitely needs to have light for my brain chemistry to operate properly. And one of the practices that I find myself using to sort of get through those icky moments is creating a space in my brain for gratitude to exist. And often before I even get out of bed in the morning, I try to take a moment and be grateful that I'm in a warm bed with a down comforter, and that soon I will be out in a warm kitchen making myself a cup of coffee, and just really allowing that feeling of gratitude for how lucky I am that those are my circumstances when I wake up in the morning, to set a tone for the day. And that really does help shift out of an anxious state or maybe a depressed, why is it still dark at 6 o'clock in the morning, what do I have to do today, to just start the day with a sense of gratitude. Makes a tone that helps me throughout the day.
I was listening to a TED Talk yesterday, and it was a gentleman who would describe himself as a pessimist, a lifelong pessimist, and he was sort of curious about whether that was something that was, genetically hardwired or something that was learned behavior. And he said, well, perhaps I should try to do an experiment for a year and see, if I can change that pessimism and change it into, sort of a mindset of gratitude. So it's interesting you bring up coffee, because he was thinking, we'll start with my, I'm grateful for this cup of coffee, but I have to thank his exercise was, I want to personally thank everybody that was involved with this, this cup of coffee.
Every bean that was picked, every roaster that,
right. And so he set off on, trying to, in person, mindfully thank people. And he ended up in, I think it was, he ended up in South America with some coffee growers, and then they started talking about the machinery that they use, started talking about, and where those people may live, and about the truck that delivers, and that, so it's like dividing, an atom or something,
when you actually get down to all of the participation that it took to bring you that cup of coffee. How much do you really have to be grateful for?
Right. So it's and when Dave picked the word gratitude, I was thinking, I went to, you hear people, well, make a gratitude list. It's like, and people that give you that advice, are they following it themselves? And are the lists superficial? Are you actively engaged in the things that you're grateful for? Right? And I think it's a great exercise. I think also, with as stressful as everybody's lives are, that that it's important to pull back.
And remember, it is a complete reset. And they've done research. Christina Neff, who did a lot of research on self-compassion, she's a neurologist. The gratitude is a huge component of that. It's the same as meditation, where it changes the brain chemistry. And if you do have depression or anxiety, it is like that gratitude list, the gratitude journal, which I know Oprah is a big fan of that too. She has a gratitude journal that she writes the things that she's thankful for. I think it's really easy to focus on the things that aren't working well, or that are conflicting us, or...
Well, and that was one thing that he brought up yesterday. Is it easier for us to default to, what's wrong? and which is kind of like being a victim of your circumstances, right? And then gratitude, bringing it back to gratitude, is taking control of it. Right. And, as you say, physiologically reduces stress levels.
Yes. And when you have examples of people that have survived things like concentration camps and unwarranted incarceration for 15 and 20 years, and they're grateful even for those opportunities, to learn and grow and develop themselves in capacities they never knew they had. Like, those people are incredible examples for, like, oh my gosh, if they can have gratitude for circumstances that seem so dire. Yeah, that's Rumi's guest house. It's like, invite all of those experiences in and be grateful that they all exist so that you have the opportunity to learn.
And I find myself, when I hear of people that have survived these horrible tragedies, I think, and as you said, they find their path to gratitude. And I sometimes find myself very jealous because it's like, it's so. It's
I wish I were incarcerated.
No, not that. But the whole, like, wow. And this is when I'm sort of in this cynical place. Right. I think, yeah, what it's, and it's such. And I say this, it's such an easy exercise. I say easy. Pulling yourself into self-awareness and doing a valid assessment or true assessment of who you are and where you are and how you are in the world is not easy.
But it's so accessible.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, we can take control of that situation.
Well, and the other thing that comes to, when I think about this, I think, well, am I an imposter in gratitude because I never, survived anything that was so tragic? And, that's like the inner critic of saying, and then, no, you're not. You're not an imposter. Like, you have access to this in a different way, and it's just as powerful.
And depression and anxiety and all of the normal things affect you too, even though, they may not be under extreme circumstances. I worked in Baltimore City last month, and it's it's an urban environment, and there's poverty, and there's areas that are not pleasant to visually look at. You have to get through some neighborhoods, and the kids are dealing with areas that certainly aren't uplifting, and experiences that are challenging. And same thing, like, that's not my daily life. But when I'm there, I have empathy for what they're going through. And one of the things that we did was we had all of them. They all have cell phones, of course. And we had them photograph the sky. Because there's always, like, beautiful skyscapes that are accessible. And, just that idea of looking up and seeing the clouds or the light or the sunrise or the sunset, like, we all have access to that at some point. And so they took these beautiful photographs, and then we incorporated that into the mosaic that we did as part of the background, and also an exercise. That you have access to this beauty, and even when you feel like you're stuck or you're like in an ugly row house that's boarded up 2 doors down from you, you can look up and be grateful that you have access to that. And that experience translated into my life, like when I'm driving and when I'm walking, and I get stuck in my thoughts of worrying about people or worrying about political situations or war situations, just looking up and being so grateful, like, oh my gosh, there's a whole beautiful piece of artwork constantly moving on display, and just being so grateful for the clouds. That's been my, I'm really grateful for the clouds these days.
And I was thinking about, how most people can't even begin to imagine the conditions that some people live in, and how much we take for granted.
Yeah.
And how something so, and I say simple, can shift your perspective. And but then, invoking that empathy, like, I have no idea how these people survive in situations. And
Well, and I think
then you draw on the same thing. Like, we're all drawing on the same beauty, right? There was do you ever read any of David White's poetry?
Oh my gosh, I love David White. Yeah.
He was at, I had there's a quote that I have about relating alertness and sort of extracting yourself from your mundane life. And there's the sky that's always there for you. It's always present.
Yeah.
And, if we just shift our perspective and anyway.
Yeah, he's one of my favorites, actually.
He's amazing.
There's a poem he wrote called Coleman's Bed that's just, it's so beautiful. And one of the lines is, apprentice yourself to yourself. And, like, this is what we have right here. We're in this body. We're not anywhere else. This is our life, our experience. And what can you do to find gratitude? What can you do to foster compassion? We don't have to compare ourselves everywhere else and come up short or...
and just like the simple act of, like, this TED Talk he was saying, the simple act of thanking somebody for their time. Or just taking, it's very simple. Take the time, and then how that affects them and their day and how they treat somebody else in the process.
It's completely contagious and ripples out.
Right, exactly.
And people really feel it. Like I'm really good at that. Like, thank you so much for making that copy for me. Thank you so much for, like, letting me in line, or for just like that. It's so simple and beautiful and effective, and can be used through every single part of your day.
And I think, back to what you said originally is or one of the things you said, because you said a lot of things that were very rich, but
I'm so grateful to have you.
Are you grateful to have us, Dave?
I'm very
the physiology of that gratitude and being mindful and being thankful, and I said it's so easy, but for some people it's not easy. They're so, we live and I think culturally, it's, you go to, places like India or, and you see that on a daily basis, just the way they interact with each other, right? That's part of it's almost just, that's how they are. They're very grateful to have visitors. They're very, they're constantly acknowledging that. And I think in our culture, we tend to be, the opposite, like very entitled and self-absorbed. And
well, I know when I just went to New York last week for a very happy occasion, which was wonderful.
Did Hannah have a baby?
Hannah had a baby.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I got to meet a brand new, beautiful baby. But when I do go to New York, I am not a good New York person in that, there is a level of like having to have a bit of a shield up. And I am someone that wants to make eye contact and say hello to everyone. And in New York, that's not really the norm as much.
I do the same thing, by the way. I say hello to people.
Yeah, and the people that live in New York are like, shh,
country mouse from the country mouse comes to the city.
Hello.
Doesn't matter anymore.
No, right. I do too. But
empathically, there is so much energy and so much going on. Yes, and then also, like I think I leave myself open to a lot. I just I realize, it's important to have boundaries too. And I think that if you live in New York, it's so congested and there's such a finite amount of privacy and space that you can have. And I think that's something that I'm grateful for. Like I can walk outside my door and there's a field across the street and it's spacious and I can be in nature really easily, and that feeds me, and I'm really grateful for that. And I think when you don't have that maybe you have to learn to take care of yourself in different ways.
Right.
Because not every, there is a lot of energy that's not particularly happy and wonderful and practicing gratitude or awareness around that. and maybe you're confronted. I mean, I know when I go into the cities and there's people, homeless people that are asking for money. I mean, I drive with some food in my car and granola bars, and so I can give people a couple dollars and some food at stoplights because I know they're going to be there.
Right.
If that were part of my daily interaction, like that's not part of my normal life when I'm driving in Talbot County or outside my door. And I just wonder like how much, like it is maybe easier to practice gratitude when you have access to a lot more of the comforts and the things that keep me feeling sane and whole.
Well, were you going to say something, Dave?
Well, just to kind of throw it off a little bit, there's also this comment usually by parents to children, you should be grateful.
Right, right.
Yeah, it's grateful. Gratitude with guilt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's children starving in India. Like, I think I heard that at dinner a few times.
Right. Yeah.
Finish what's on your plate.
That's one of the reasons why that word got marginalized, at least for me. It was
or marginalized, or feels shallow, or just feels threatening,
like,
almost.
It's like a,
right.
somewhat negative.
It's conditional, right? A conditional. It's conditional.
Right.
Which I think
you should judge your life against somebody else.
Right.
And
grateful.
True gratitude is not conditional, right?
Right.
It's unconditional. I mean, you sort of move through your world with, and I think that, when I practice daily, like you, to keep myself grounded. And, I know when I'm feeling a little bit like there's maybe a little tear.
Right, there's a little edginess,
and I'm like, I just got snagged by this. This is so upsetting.
Right.
That somebody else's energy is affecting me.
Right.
Or that it's changing the way I'm interacting with somebody, and I'm really, really, really hyper aware of that.
Me too. And the interesting thing about that is that snag, that tear, and there's a part of me that then starts judging myself for being triggered by someone, for being like, I'm like, oh my God, I just got sucked right back into a place I don't want to be. And then recognizing that again is like, and be grateful for that, because now you can see a spot that still has rough edges, that you still need to look at. And the
vulnerability. I mean, and you can't, I think that you can't have gratitude without the vulnerability. I think they go hand in hand.
Right.
I mean, if you think about it.
Well, you're opening yourself up to receiving and acknowledging that reception.
Right.
You're saying like, I am receiving, I am blessed, and thank you.
Right.
And
I think
you're open.
And I also, I feel like that me deceiving myself that I can be grounded and grateful every day is setting myself up for, some disappointment.
Right. Sometimes you're just going to feel like crap.
Right. And then I go to, okay, well, you know what? We share this space. Like all of us on this planet. We share this space. And guess what? We're made of the same material. And guess what? We're going to affect each other, because that's like quantum physics in in life, right?
Yeah.
And how it just radiates out.
At a macro level.
There was an.
Go ahead.
I was going to say there was an interesting piece I listened to yesterday, and it was about leadership. And then it started, and I don't want to get off into a political discussion about this, but it made me think about how we interact with each other, and how we've been taught like this traditional role of leadership is, more like dictatorship, right? You have to do it my way, or you're fired, or you have to do it my way, or you're marginalized, and if you don't, you're marginalized. And one of the things that came up in this research, which I think is so beautiful, is that, people feel safe and comfortable with somebody that is warm and compassionate.
Right.
And
they're more productive, and they're more willing to show up, and they're more willing to share their ideas because it's safe for them to
and they feel grateful, right?
Yeah.
They feel grateful that they're in an environment where they're appreciated and respected.
Yeah, and they'll be better workers, and so it's
really
a win-win. But we have this, that sort of like the authoritarian
Right.
figure is what's going to yield the best results,
Right.
but it's just the opposite.
Like manage by fear is the only way you can manage.
Yeah,
right?
and
Or
Brene Brown
right.
does great work about that, on corporate levels now. For you can't shame someone and expect them to perform.
Right. It turns inward, right? I mean, it goes and it comes out sideways.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's
How does it work with somebody who's in a unique, for example, client relationship, like the people that you work with at the restaurant? Do they improve when they perceive the table as being, manifestly grateful for the service? Does that come?
I would say more. It's that's less common than people that are demanding and treat people with disrespect.
Yeah.
I would say, and I see that on a daily basis. And I have to, one thing that I say to the people with whom I work is, consider those people that are being condescending and tricky as teachers about how you don't want to be in the world.
Right.
And again, the whole being able to walk a mile in my shoes. I mean, I always say, more than likely, these people have never had to work in a restaurant.
Right.
They've never worked in a restaurant, or they've never been in the service industry. And
Which is what I think should be required for all humans. You must.
Well, it's like selfless service, right? Is what it is in certain respect. But it's interesting, as I think that, and I don't know if we've talked about this before, but I've been very surprised at the lack of gratitude with people in that instance, and people I consider friends treating the people with whom I work with a little shade of disrespect.
Right.
And I find that I find that very bothersome, because you have a person that's one way in a situation and very different in another situation.
Right.
And
that's gratitude with conditions. I will be
is, yes.
grateful for you if you're at my same
if you do what I said,
level.
right.
If you're my superior, and
But I'm going to pay you.
because I'm gonna.
right.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna tip you. I'm
Right.
gonna-
Right.
Right. Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
but in a funny way, that person who tips feels like in some cases they get a pass about expressing gratitude.
Right.
No, I
right.
think that's true. I don't like
Yeah,
that.
my gratuity is now in the form of money, and I don't have to.
And money is energy. I
embody it.
remember us having a conversation
Yeah.
about this probably like 15 years ago about this relationship to money and how money is energy.
Yeah.
And it's tricky.
And I
right?
think gratitude is a currency too. I mean,
Yes,
it's literally
definitely.
a currency, and that's the one that I want to trade on. And I've been in situations where I'm eating out with people and they are disrespectful to servers, or it's so embarrassing for me.
right.
Like,
It hurts my heart.
and it's
actually.
like, and then it's like, what, like, where is the line for intervention?
right.
And
yeah.
often I err on the side of like, please forgive my friend. Continue doing the work that you're doing. It's really hard.
It is hard. Yeah, it is hard. And I also, I take this sort of black and white approach to it, which is not healthy.
I was gonna say it's not a good idea.
Not at all. and I'm aware. But do I want somebody in my life that treats me one way and treats somebody else another?
Right.
That
It feels hypocritical.
It does.
It feels like
it does. And then it's like, and I'll question my relationship. So what does that say about me, that I'm willing to, still have this person in my life, and that is basically being disrespectful to my family, because that's how I think of everybody I work with at the
self-aware.
Or not right. And I think that's too. I think that perhaps go to, wow, I'm so grateful that I have that self-awareness, and I'm
Right.
sorry that they don't, and I
Right.
hope they find it one day.
right.
Yeah.
There was a situation. I did a lot of, shows selling my work, and there was a couple that always came and they collected my work, which was wonderful. And the husband was so easygoing and so appreciative and just so grateful that I was there, and, you know, wanted to collect my work and just loved everything and just thanked me profusely for being in the space, for bringing my work there, for doing such good work. And his wife was lovely, but things were never quite right. They always needed adjustment. They always, you know, she needed extra attention all the time, to the point where, like, wow, this is
Not
you're a little
healthy,
troublesome
right.
sometimes. I found out after I'd known them both and adore both of them, just very different kind of personalities, that he was a survivor of the concentration camps. He was actually hidden.
I remember you telling me this.
Hidden
Yeah.
in a tunnel underneath a hospital for 2 years when he was like prepubescent, like into like early teens, and when I found that out, I said, how can you be like so happy and so
Right.
gracious, all, you know, like you're like, what an amazing ability. And he confessed that he was on an anti-anxiety medication.
Right.
Which, you know, I thought was hilarious that was
Well,
and then he's, you know, when you have those experiences, I think then you get to choose, do you live the rest of your life in
As a
fear?
prisoner.
As a
Continue to be a
prisoner, or
prisoner, right.
as like expecting the worst thing to happen? Or do you shift that into gratitude, where like, I survived and I'm grateful for this life, and I'm grateful for every aspect of it.
It's like, did you all read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning?
Yes.
And in that, the one, not the one, I mean, there are many things that stick out about his experience, but him looking through the bars and searching for a flower, and how that kept him, you know, grounded, basically, like in touch with, you know.
Right.
So gratitude, right?
Yeah, and not to have to compare to those really extreme cases, but it is really inspiring to have people that have had such difficult experiences be able to find the flower, and to be able to find gratitude and happiness and in their lives.
And there's many things that popped into my mind as you were talking, and you know, you think of the lack of control that we have when others are in despair, and thinking that, you know, we can pull them out of that, and saying, well, if they would just be grateful, or see that this is so beautiful and their life is so, and you know, that whole, I mean, I have to keep pulling myself back, and well, I'm grateful I can show everybody else how to do that, right? And the arrogance that follows with that.
Well, one of the things
enmeshed in that.
One of the things that I do with kids, we do a lot of work around compassion and empathy, and checking in. You know, like being vulnerable enough that you're going to check in with how you're feeling at the moment, and we'll do gratitude circles. So, you know, you check in with your name, your number, and then what's something that you're grateful for. I said, and it can be as simple as taking your shoes off and walking barefoot in the grass. You know, like just something that really touches you. And usually the first couple of rounds, there's a lot of friends and family. I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for my friends and family. And, you know, that, which is wonderful. Like, please be grateful for your friends and family. And now I'm going to ask you to like go a little bit deeper, you know, like really dwell for a second in that feeling. Like, what is something that you can really sink in and be grateful for? And I think it is part of that vulnerability, you know, like to really touch in and recognize like what you have that is working for you, what you have that is supporting you. And there are a million things, but it is a practice, like anything else, to like shift into not the rote, because I do this to my family at Thanksgiving too. I'm like, can we please go around the room? And my brother's like, oh, Sue. Do you have to smudge first? But it's a practice like anything else, like all the other things. And you can't just go like, now I'm morbidly depressed and I'm going to just...
Well, I think, you know, you know how important that is, that you're teaching these children to do this, right? And you think about how, and we talked about this last night, like how quickly our brains are changing, how quickly that happens.
Yes.
And how, you know, they've discovered that physiologically, young kids that are spending a lot of time interacting with screens, their empathy,
they're not building compassion. Yeah,
no, they're
exactly.
not building because there's structurally the brain is changing. I mean, the spindle cells that are responsible for the empathy are changing. They're shrinking,
And we're not having the contact. We're not dipping into those conversations like Sherry Turkle shared. You know, she's been studying this for 30 years.
Yeah.
And when you don't have the time to actually connect with someone, to learn how to sync that up, which I think she said takes about 20 minutes to really. And when you have your cell phone even turned off on the table,
it's still a distraction.
It's still a distraction.
Right.
And I mean, I'm guilty of that. It's hard to like sink in and take the time.
Yeah.
And I think the gratitude is a path towards that shift and that depth, you know, to realize that you are connected to everyone else, and that the way that you respond to others is contagious. And I mean, we're connected in really real ways. And the other thing that we talked about last night too is, you know, like how we're not only connected to each other, but we're connected to nature.
Well, and that's when you know, that's one thing that is upsetting to me, is that there's a hard line drawn with us as a species versus everything else. And it's like, we're made from the same material. We evolved from all of these living things on the planet. Evolved,
and
from
we don't
a
get to
single-cell
exist
organism.
for a second without the support of the air, of the water, of the land that grows all the food. Cephalopods.
Cephalopods. But I really have to tell you, and I don't think I've thanked you for the work that you do with these children, because it's really important.
I'm gonna let that come in.
Please do, because it's, you know, I'm teaching kids to, you know, settle into themselves and really understand how important.
And you know how
is.
that works. You know, like we teach the things that we need to practice.
True.
And that is, it's all about that. I need to practice art, I need to practice gratitude, and I need to model that and be held accountable. And that's so much of, I think, like being a model for what I'm trying to become myself. And being gracious and full of gratitude is another one. I'm really grateful. I'm grateful for you and for the friendship that we have, and for the ability to have conversations and let myself be known in a vulnerable way. So thank you.
Thank you.